Hello, everyone. Here we are back again to talk about Browning chapter 4. Let me go ahead and do a share here. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's talk about Browning chapter 4. Is the title is a game worth playing? What game are they talking about here? Well, since nobody's here, just me, I guess I have to ask and answer the question myself. The game we're talking about is grant writing. Grant writing, it's a game we all play. Well, not all of us, the grant writers, we play. We hope to win. And again, winning is getting the grant. That's the game we're really talking about here. How many games do we want to play? To what degree? What level? What speed? Those are all decisions that we make as grant writers. Okay, central question. Not every grant is worth pursuing. That is true. Not every grant is worth pursuing. Once you start getting and entering the grant ecosystem, you'll realize that you can get grants. You can get more grants than you can write. You'll be getting so many grant opportunities that some don't really fit what you're trying to do. Sometimes you're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, or and that always doesn't work. Even though you sometimes get the funding, surprisingly, and you kind of get surprised because you're like, oh man, I really didn't want that funding, and you end up getting it, and now you have to spend it and put together the program that you said you were going to put together. Time and capacity, right? You only have so much time, only so much capacity, and limited resources. You can't spend all your time grant writing. I mean, unless your school or district or organization deems you as the grant writer, then yeah, I suppose you could. And then having a strategic evaluation to prevent burnout. Remember, grant writing is not like an 8 to 5, 5 days a week sort of thing. Okay, I've written grants where I'm working 18 hours a day for 7 straight days over the holidays, right? Grants and deadlines, they don't respect holidays. They don't respect a lot of, deadlines and your weekends and all of those things. And so, you have to sort of, have a certain level of commitment if you're going to actually do that. And sometimes really ultimately really drop everything other than the grant. I mean, you have to go to the bathroom and you have to eat and you have to have some sleep. But other than that, really, it's really full on focus on the grant. And if you sort of like that lifestyle and you like that challenge and you like that opportunity, then go for it. But for the most part, you do have to sort of pace yourself and prevent yourself from being burned out too early. Okay. Why matching the right funder matters. You can get grants that are misaligned and they waste time, right? You're turning your wheels. You're applying for a grant that doesn't really match your organizational needs. I've had some people that I consult with that I consult them not to write the grant. To be honest with you, I don't know how often I do that. Maybe as much as 30% of the time. I'm like, I don't recommend it. You should do it if you want to, but I don't recommend it. You don't fit. Your organization doesn't fit. So you have to be honest with yourself and knowing sometimes it's kind of difficult to quote unquote leave money on the table, but if you don't fit and there's no alignment, then it's not going to be good, because remember, then you have to actually put together the program and spend the money, right? And if it's something you don't want to do, then it's going to be really hard to do it. So early screening saves efforts. What we mean by that is you got to screen early. You got to read the RFP, request for proposals. You got to read it. That's the first thing you do. When I consult on grant writing, that's the first thing I'm like, read the RFP, read it from top to bottom, make sure you qualify, make sure it aligns with what you're doing. And then you have also like strong matches are going to improve your success rate, right? The more alignment that you have between what people are looking for and what you have to offer, the greater chance that you're going to fit. Okay, Research funders' priorities, what are they? Those are all on the request for proposals, okay? Or request for applications. Remember, they don't go by many names. Request for applications, request for, I don't know, NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity. I've heard that one as well, the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. That comes from the federal government sometimes. And then reviewing the eligible requirements and understanding geographic and population limits. So let me show you an example here. Let me see if I put this window here, if it's going to pop up. No, it's not going to pop up. Let me put it back. And let me share that window. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's an example. This is the grant that I'm consulting on that people want to write. The first thing on E is the eligibility, right? Eligible to complete the funding, right? You have to be a nonprofit. If you're not a nonprofit, you don't qualify. You have to have a 501c3, okay? You got to have that designation right there. Okay, and then you also must serve 2 counties within the inland region, right? These are the ones I told them they did qualify. They serve Fresno, Madera, and Merced, but you have to serve at least 2 of these. So if you're not actually doing this, if you don't have offices and you don't have service in those 2 counties, don't even apply for this grant. Don't try to make it up and say, oh yeah, Fresno, and yeah, we're thinking about Madera, or don't try to, say that you're actually doing something you're not, because it's not going to go well for you. Okay. And then here's the other thing, right? To be considered, you got to have a minimum score of 50% of the available points and only 1 proposal per applicant. You can't apply more than once. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and go back to Browning, because I wish it was an easier way to in Windows. Okay. Population limits. Okay. Okay. Track funders' contact information, knowing exactly how do they want the grant? Do they want it through an email? Do they want it through some sort of grant, submission system? Don't wait till the very last day to figure that out. Know that early, because that is very important. You don't want to spend all the time writing a grant that you don't submit because you're a minute late. Document your funding history. A lot of grants ask, why should we give you this grant? Not exactly like this, but they ask, what type of grants, have you gotten in the past that show you're successful in doing the type of work that you want to do, right? And you have to have some a lot of times if you're new to this game or new to the organization, you don't know their funding history. You don't know what type of grants they've gotten. So you need to talk to the people who do, a principal, a superintendent, what have you, and find out. Say, hey, do we have a list? Is anybody keeping our funding history? If you don't have a dedicated grant writer, you might not be keeping that history, but maybe you've gotten other grants that you're going to need to document. Maybe it falls on you to document that, to be able to show the funder, yeah, we have been successful in doing this, and this is what we've done. And then record restrictions and timelines, right? We just saw the one I just showed you, quiet restrictions. Let me show you another document. Okay, let me go back to that window. Okay, restrictions and timelines, right? Right here it says, okay, there's a 1.5 million available money, right? And you can apply for up to 150,000. So that means what? There's going to be 10 people that get this award, right? And it's for a 19-month performance period. That means that the grant is for 19 months. So you divide 150 divided by 19, you're only getting about less than $8,000 a month. Okay. So it's not a lot of money. It's enough to maybe have 1 FTE, which is 1 full-time equivalent person. Even if it's like 4 people that are 25% time, you have enough maybe for 1 person. Maybe you have half of FTE for something like that. This really is not a lot of money. Okay. It looks like a lot of money at first, 150, but when you get down to it, it looks like it really is not a lot of money. Okay. And then other restrictions of how you can actually get more money if you're serving more counties. Okay. All right. Let's go back to the other one. Just one example. I'm showing you that example because I'm consulting on that one at the present time. It seemed appropriate. Okay. How do you want a government grant? Government meaning state or federal, right? Follow the guidelines exactly. Okay, exactly. Do exactly as they tell you. Okay, exactly as they tell you. Confirm the eligibility requirements, right? Make sure you're eligible. Sometimes they ask for a 501c3. Sometimes they ask for it's a government form, 990 form. Sometimes they ask for your whatever they ask for. Make sure that you have those documents and that you're actually eligible. I've been in situations where we were even in a room with the state players. The people that were going to be giving this money came to Fresno to talk to us, really essentially encouraging. It was a whole cadre of people that I was involved with, and we were applying, and we didn't have our ducks in line. We were missing one document. We didn't know we were missing it, but we did after that one. And so you have to really know. You got to make sure. Don't wait till the last minute to find out. Avoid wasting your effort on poor fits. I'll show you an example of another grant in a little bit of exactly how we follow the exact. We really don't mess around. It's sort of very, in many ways, very formulaic, or maybe in many ways very, there's perhaps a great deal of structure, right? If you come from the research world and you understand the grant writing, there's a great deal of structure involved. And so let me see if I can pull the other grant up, and maybe I'll show you a little bit later. And this one's a city grant that I'm consulting on, a city grant, not state. Okay, limitations to watch out for, geographic restrictions, as we saw earlier, right? Population eligibility, right? Is your population, if it's for youth and you're not serving youth, or if it's for, people with, some sort of mental illness and you don't have that, then you're not eligible, right? And then any previous funding exclusions, right? Staff capacity. If you're going to hire 4 people with the grant for 19 months for 25% of their time, do you have 4 people, right? You got to be on board. Whoever you write into the budget, they got to be on board. So the leadership has to be on board that, hey, if we get this, we're going to utilize this person for 25% of their time, or 50, or whatever the case may be, right? Make sure you have that administrative support, and, evaluate all the reporting requirements. Usually those are towards the end of the NOFO or RFA or whatever you want to call it. Usually at the very end, they tell you, hey, you're going to have to turn in a evaluation report every 3 months. Tell us how you're doing. That's pretty common. That's what grant administrators do for a living. Okay, I mean, that's not the only thing they do. That's a major part of responsibility is, getting those reports of how you're doing, essentially kind of watching over you, but from very far, maybe Sacramento, maybe Washington, D.C. The only way that they can watch over you, if they're not doing like yearly site visits, it's your reports, your reporting reports. What have you done? How many people did you serve? What did you spend the money on? They ask all kinds of those type of questions. Okay. Are you eligible? Does the timeline work, right? Is it too soon? Is it too late? Whatever, you got to make sure the timeline works for you and your own calendar and the people that are going to be part of the grant. Does it align with your priorities? And is sustainability possible? What does that mean? That means after the grant is over, are you able to continue the program without that government support going on forever? The one I showed you, after 19 months, if this is a really important program, what are you going to do to be able to continue to sustain it, to keep it going after 19 months? That's an important question to ask and to answer. You got to have an answer to that, because a lot of times they ask about sustainability. Okay. And it doesn't actually mean you actually have to do it, but you have to have a plan for how you would do it, how you're going to do it. 19 months, nobody knows who's going to be doing what. I'm just being honest here, right? But at least you're like, hey, I have a plan and we are going to sustain it, and this is how we're going to sustain it. Okay. Don't chase the money, right? Again, don't apply for everything. I've had some, people that I've consulted with that, really do, they need money, they got staff, they need to pay people, right? That do that. Avoid misaligned priorities and don't ignore compliance rules. Those are going to be in the, request for applications or request for proposals. What are the compliance rules associated with this money? They all come with compliance rules. Okay. The more prepared you are, the more confident you're going to be. All you need is one grant under your belt for you to gain a tremendous amount of confidence, even if it's like $50,000 or something small, right? Maybe 100,000. All you need is that, right? And the way to get that is to write a grant. Writing is the best practice, really. Relationships are going to also strengthen applications with funders, and having good relationships. When people give you a grant and you're reporting with them and you're turning in your reports and you're communicating with them, you got to make sure that you nurture and you take care of those relationships, because you're going to need money 19 months down the line, and those relationships could really, help you secure the next grant. Always a grant writer. Good lesson for a grant writer. A grant writer is always thinking about the next grant. Sometimes I finish a grant and sometimes I get a day off and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm already like jumping on the next grant as I'm completing and turning the previous grant. And that's how the grant world is, especially when you have highs and a lot of money comes out, generally, right before, a lot of times right before the fiscal budget year ends, you're going to see, a spike. Those spikes is where you have to really be ready to pounce and to go after money. And then also strategic restraint is leadership, knowing what to go after and what not to go after. Customizing your checklist for your district or your school or whatever, involving the finance person. Remember, you got to have the finance person. If you don't know how to do a budget, you got to have a finance person, right? Hopefully, you're not afraid of putting the budget together, because I think putting a budget together is one of the most rewarding things of a grant writer, being able to understand the numbers, not just the words and what you're going to do, but to understand how to be able to fund it. That is one of the most rewarding things for a grant writer, to be able to do that. So hopefully you do not shy away from that. Anybody can learn it if you're committed to it. Okay. And using planning documents really to guide your decisions in the grant. Which grants should you say no to? Right. That's a good question. You got to figure that out with your leadership. And again, how does it align with what you want to do? Also, don't say no to everything because it's not a perfect fit, or you'll never write a grant. I don't think I've ever written a grant really that it was a perfect fit. Right? No, you got to be able to bend a little bit, right? But don't bend too much, I guess, right? How do you evaluate opportunity cost and who should be involved in the decisions, right? What type of leadership is involved? Okay. What's next is it's about writing, aligning your budget with your narratives. One of the really a grant writing mentor of mine. That's that she's gotten hundreds of millions of grants awarded, but she always starts with the budget. The budget is going to tell you what your limitations are, and it's going to tell you what your opportunities are, and what you can actually do and what you can't do, right? And you start with the budget, and once you put the budget together, then you go on to go design the program, or to tailor the program, or to do what you have to do to write the narrative. Okay. And then prepare for submission. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. We'll go ahead and end now.